Hey robot makers! So do you want to make a fun robot that can draw circles around the rest? It's time to give BurgerBot a major upgrade and make it controllable over Wi-Fi. Sound good? Then this is the show for you. So come with me, or should I say, let's dive in. My name's Kevin, come with me as we build robots, bring them to life with code and a whole load of fun along the way. Okay, let's go over to our keynote. I'm going to stop that robot making that crunching sound just so I can concentrate for a second. So we just do that. There we go. Okay, so yes, this is all about BurgerBot, calling it BurgerBot version 2. It's got some major upgrades. You can see there from the screen, one of the upgrades is it's got a pen, and it's also Wi-Fi controllable. So these are some really major upgrades to quite a simple robot. I'm going to look at today how we achieve those things. So we're going to look at the new features. We're going to look at something called Logo. We're going to look at the MicroPython code and something called Few, which is from Pimroni, and that's a web and templating engine for MicroPython. You can do some really cool stuff with that. We're going to make a web user interface out of Few, and that means we can control the robot from anywhere as long as we're in a couple of meters distance from it. We don't need an existing Wi-Fi connection. We can just control it as an access point. So we're going to have a bit of a demo as well, and then we'll have a bit of a live stream chat for people who are watching this live. And if you're not watching this live, you're watching this on recording, I'll cut that section off, and if you want to join in, you'll have to join me live to see that. Okay, let me get over to the next bit. So let's have a look at what some of these upgrades are. So there's BurgerBot, the Fusion 360 rendered picture on the right hand side. So the major thing is the pen mechanism. I was thinking about how to do this, and we'll talk about this in a bit more detail, but I've added a pen mechanism so it can draw now. I've also changed where the battery is held. Originally on the original BurgerBot, the battery kind of just like floated around on the back somewhere. It wasn't really anywhere designed for it to go, so I usually just sort of connected up like one of these little gallium batteries, and yeah, it didn't really have a specific place to go. I've also changed where the Raspberry Pi Pico, so this is run by a Raspberry Pi Pico W, and on the original, which is this is the original BurgerBot, this sat on top, so it's sort of just in the middle on the top. Now to make way for the pen mechanism, I've had to move that to the side, and I also took the opportunity to rework that support structure and give somewhere for the Pico to live along with all the other stack of components, and we'll have a look at those. So the other major upgrades are it has an access point mode. So this means we can connect to this over Wi-Fi without using existing Wi-Fi connections and an existing LAN. So if you work in like a school, for example, and you've got a school Wi-Fi, you don't need to have any kind of school Wi-Fi password. You can just control this from your phone or from a tablet or from a computer, just by connecting to the existing Wi-Fi hotspot that this will produce itself. So it's pretty cool. We'll also be looking at logo commands very briefly, just how we can use those in our BurgerBot. And it also has a new look. So you might notice there's a few little style differences on this new version. So on the old version, it's got quite a smooth front. The newer version's got a little inset on where the rangefinder is. And also the wheels are very slightly different. If I grab one of the newer wheels, you'll see these are like half the distance, half the thickness of the original ones. And I'll talk about why that is as well slightly later on. So they're the major, the high level view of the upgrades. So one of the choices I had was where to put the pen. I wanted to add a pen to this robot, and I was thinking, first of all, I'll just stick it on the back. But nice and easy to do that. I don't have to change any of these existing components too much. Maybe just have a little thing like a shim that fits in, and then you can just put a pen mechanism. And there's loads of different ways of adding a pen. If you look at the SMARS robot, there's a really nice mechanism there that Kevin Thomas designed, and it's kind of like an arm that lifts the pen up and down, and it pivots using a servo to lift it up and down. And I thought, I like that, but I want something slightly different. So first of all, the version you can see on the top of the screen there is what I originally was thinking about, and was adding a pen to the back. And the more I thought about this, I thought, I'm going to run into some problems here. So if I stick a pen on the very back of the robot, let me grab a pen and try and demonstrate here at the side. So if I had a pen to the back there, think about where the origin of the robot is, which is right in the middle. As this rotates round, it's going to actually draw an arc. So that black line there represents the sort of path. So it's going to draw a line as it's going in a straight line. As we then turn, it's going to draw an arc, and then as it goes forward, it's going to continue that line. So it's going to look really weird, kind of a bit janky. And if you were trying to draw something out like a pattern or, you know, a line for another robot to follow or something, this is going to be, or even text will be quite difficult to draw with it being on the back. So I thought what I really need to do, my best work would be to redesign from the very ground up this robot so that a pen can go right through the very center, poke out the bottom, and be right in the middle of the two wheels. So like on the bottom, you can see there, as it goes forward and then turns on the spot, the pen nib stays exactly in the same spot, and then it can go forward and you'll get a really nice right angle. So if this is right in the very middle, in that very sort of middle point there, as it's sort of coming along and as it turns, that point will stay exactly in the middle. So that was one of the design decisions I made, and I thought it does mean I have to design every part again. I have to cut a hole in it, I have to move things out the way, make sure there's plenty of area for the pen that's going to go right through the middle to go. And then, because the pen is going up and down exactly vertically, then I also need to think about how I'm going to do that. How am I going to transfer around an arc sort of motion into an up and down motion? So that was one of the sort of engineering challenges I had with that. So putting it on the back, it's very simple to do. It's difficult to use though, and the pen will create that weird curve rotating thing. Putting it in the middle of the robot, it's difficult to add because it means a redesign, but it's very easy to use once we've got it there, and the pen will stay in the exact middle when we rotate. So the battery holder, I took the opportunity as I'm moving things out the way and off the top of the robot. So no longer could we have this Pico and all the other stack of components right in the middle, because we need our pen to go there. And rather than just move it to the side, I thought, let's actually balance the weight properly. So the first thing I did was put the battery, the Gallium battery, and I'm a massive fan of these Gallium batteries. These are from Pimoroni. I think they're available on their store. Not sure how you would go about getting these shipped in other countries. They might sell them on Adafruit, for example. I'm not sure. They might also be ones that are a similar kind of size, but this is a 400 milliamp hour 3.7 volt LiPo battery, and it's in a hard case, so it's really quite safe and has a bit of voltage protection, short circuit protection, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm a big fan of these. So that's going to sit at the very back, and it has a nice little place to go now. So it has a home to live in. It's not going to rattle around. It's going to stay nice and secure. It allows for a really compact design. So all the components at the very back of the robot are really sort of squished together now, which is quite a nice design, pleasing to look at. And it also allows the battery to be sort of held in place firmly. So as the robot's moving around, originally the battery was just sort of flailing around at the top and getting stuck in the wheels and all kinds of stuff like that. So this is a far better design. Now the actual wire for the battery goes underneath that little support structure, so there's like a little channel for it to go underneath, which means it presents the JST-PH connector in exactly where we want it to be. So on that little diagram there, it's the sort of black section. That's where the motor shim is, and where the Pimoroni LiPo, what's it called, a LiPo Pico pack, some combination of those words. Pico LiPo shim, that's what they call it. Got it there on the screen. So that connects to the Gallium battery, and we're good to go. And if you plug in your micro USB connector, it will actually charge that battery as well through that Pico LiPo shim. So I'm really pleased with how all that sort of works together. It enables the robot to have some really nice, elegant power, and it just works. That whole stack just works. It's really out of the way, no problems at all. So that's the battery holder. So the Pico holder, this is a shot as I was putting it together. The plastic looks a little bit janky there, but honestly, in real life, it looks much nicer than this. I think my camera was just being a bit harsh on it. I did have to actually take out that Pico. I had some problems with it. I think I might have bent some pins on it or something. It stopped working. Anyway, so I've replaced it with another one, and it's perfect now, no problems at all. So the Pico W is housed inside the robot rather than on top. This makes room for that pen mechanism. It's secured using some standoffs, so there's some little plastic standoffs that are designed for an M2 bolt to go through, and because they're quite deep, it's really, really secure. You don't need anything else. You don't need a nut on the other end. You can just screw this in, it'll screw into the plastic and be really held securely. You can see there the GST-PH connector is channeled underneath, so that area on the there, that's the battery, and then it goes underneath a little channel, and then the wire just appears here, and then inside here, it's around about here, is where the little connector is for that battery. So our robot can then run on its own internal power It doesn't need to be hooked up or tethered to a USB cable. It's really, really neat. Everything sort of sticks together. So if we look here, we've got a Raspberry Pi Pico W, and it's facing kind of leg out that side, so the USB connector is at the top here. I'll show you on the overhead camera in a second so you can have a good look. Then in between that sandwich there, that is the Pico LiPo shim, so that enables LiPo power charging and bring it up to 5 volts that's needed for the Pico's input pin there. And then on top of that is the Pimroni Pico motor shim, or motor pack. If it goes onto the pins that direction, it's a pack, I believe. And that has 2 connectors there, sort of an A and B motor, and it also has a quick connector on there, a Stemma QT quick connector, or a Quest connector. So that means we can add in other components there, other sensors and so on. And one of the sensors I've decided to upgrade is the rangefinder. So I've gone for a SparkFun rangefinder that has 2 Quest connectors on it, 2 quick connectors. So with a little cable I can now connect that up into that connector there and not have to worry about all the different voltages and things for the rangefinders. I have a whole bunch of these rangefinders, but they're only 5 volts is the ones that I've currently got. This particular one does have a 3.3 volt and tolerant, and I think it can also do I2C as well. But I've actually not got that working just yet. Now, the irony being, I bought this SparkFun thing. It's quite expensive because I think it had to be shipped over from the US. It was about £21 to buy that, and these are normally like pennies. These are really cheap. And when I plugged it in, I was looking for, okay, where's the library for this? There isn't a MicroPython library that I could find. So I'm going to have to dig deep and see if there is one. And if there isn't one, I shall have to write one. Do some bit banging with I2C to get that to work. So that's the electronics part inside there. You can also see the new baseboard, which has got the circle cut out for the pen. Let's go to the next slide, and then we can see the new interior layout. So here we go. This is more of a CAD view of it. So mounted in the 3D printed rear support, you can see we've got the Pico there, and there's 4 M2 bolts, 4 M2 bolts that go through. I love these really small. Let me see if I've got an example of them. That's not a good view of them. So if I just hold this up here and show you on this screen here, you can see those. They have little hexagonal nuts in them. And they really hold on securely. I really like these. I need to buy some more of them for more robots. And the other cool thing is it gives the robot a really good balance. One of the features if you like, of this BurgerBot is it has 2 wheels, and it has these sort of plastic struts to instead of having like a caster and all the complexity of that, because I couldn't find a caster that was small enough, these actually work quite well. So over time they will wear a little bit, but it's actually quite tough, this plastic. So in practice they've worked absolutely fine. And that battery being at the back there just gives it a little bit of weight to keep it sort of pointing in the right direction. So works really well. So the pen mechanism, this is my favourite thing that I've designed recently. I absolutely love how this has come out. So it's really quite an innovative design. It's like a rack and pinion style design. So you've got the motor there, and I've designed the actual holder there to be able to take any type of servo. So an SG90, an MG90, this is an MG90S, or even the is it the DS929MG, which is my favourite servo. Pimroni stock them, I think, and they're like a really high quality. You pay a bit more for them, but they're very, very high quality. So this is a really simple mechanism. It's very reliable, actually. It just works. So the pen moves up and down, on and off the paper. It's centered in the robot, so the pen is exactly where it needs to be. And that means the servo just has to be slightly off to the side. And it also means it's really easy to change pens. So I've gone for the Sharpie pens. These are just regular permanent markers, fine point sort of markers. Got a whole bunch of them. And this is designed to sort of hold them quite securely. Now there is actually a nut just off camera there. I shall show you this on the overhead in a second. There's a hole there where we can put a little M2 screw to screw against the pen. So if you're not using one of these, like using like a biro or something else, it can hold up, or even a pencil, it can screw in against that and just give it a bit of extra grip on there. It's very easy to change the pen out. There's no trouble with that at all. Yet it's strong enough to be able to sort of force the pen against the paper or the floor. And it's compatible with like a wide range of pens. I've tried quite a few and it just works. Now this whole mechanism, this whole pen mechanism is actually secured. You can see there is some little hexagonal cutouts. There's one there that isn't actually used, and then there's one on the other side. So I've just put two hexagonal nuts in there. I think these are M3 nuts, and then underneath I just screw an M3 bolt into that nut. And it secures it nicely. Now that means that this flat piece here is completely flat. The top bit is completely flat other than the little Lego studs, so it's really quick to print. And then this other piece is quite small, so again this is quite quick to print. This bit is just a bit of structure to keep the whole thing sort of in shape and not moving around too much. And there's two screws, holes there as well for the servo to screw into. So this white section, as you can probably guess, moves up and down, and it changes that rotational energy and movement into a vertical movement up and down. And then there's just these little guide holes here, little guide rails that just keep it pointing in the right direction and nice and straight. So the next thing is that the pen holder, we'll have a look at that kind of side on there. So you can see it's powered by this SG90, the rack and pinion style mechanism, as I said. The pen rises and falls vertically as the servo turns, and as the robot turns, it keeps the pen nice and centered. It's quite easy to adjust as well. So if you need to, just lift it up a bit and get the pen a bit further down, all those kinds of adjustments to adjust the pen, really, really simple to do. The pen can easily be removed at the end of a session as well, so the ink doesn't dry up. You can just put your lids back on so you're not drying these things out. Very easy to sort of just maintain the whole thing. So I'm really, really pleased how this turned out. Now, I've fully documented this as well, so if you head over to kevsrobots.com/BurgerBot, you'll be redirected to the blog page that's got all the updates on for BurgerBot version 2, and you can download the STL files yourself and get printing. There's a full bill of materials on there as well. We'll have a look at that in a minute, actually. And what else is on there? Links to the code as well on GitHub, so all the code that I've created that I'm going to show you on the demo today. So, access point mode. So this was something I've been working on basically all weekend to try and get working the way I want. It's not quite there yet, but it does work, and we can have a play with that today. So what that means is you can create your own access point using a Pico W. You can connect to that from your phone, your tablet, or your computer. It just appears as a hotspot. It's really fun giving it a name as well, because you can name that little Wi-Fi hotspot. So you're not reliant on an existing Wi-Fi network. So somebody reached out to me about wanting to build a couple of these BurgerBots and have them, I think it was a Girl Guides robot session that they were going to do, and they didn't want to use the existing Wi-Fi network there. They just want to use what they've got, like phones and so on. So this means that we can do that. It's not a problem. And it's just temporary while the robot's running. Once the robot's switched off, that Wi-Fi connection goes away, and you can only have one thing connected, one device connected to the hotspot. So it's pretty much a one-to-one control. So that's exactly how we want it to be. And I think this is probably how we're going to do robot control until Raspberry Pi finally launched the Bluetooth code for the Pico W. I'm sure that's in the works at the moment, but there's probably a bit of testing that they need to do on that code to make it work properly, and it'll be a firmware upgrade once that is complete. So until that's there, we will work with Wi-Fi, and that works just as well. So we've got a couple of things in the user interface, the web user interface that the Pico W presents as well. It blows my mind that all these things are happening from the Pico, but they are, and it can move the robot forwards, backwards, turn left and right, move the pen up and down. So this is very similar types of commands that we used to use for something called Logo. So yeah, work in progress, might be a bit janky at the moment. I've not quite got it where I want it to be, but it does work. I'll show you what I mean in the demo in a minute. So yeah, if you want to grab the code, you can head over to github.com/kevinmcaleer/BurgerBot, and all the code that I've been working on is there for you to play with. So yeah, I'll be updating that as we go. Any questions, you can put them in the chat that's on GitHub, or you can head over to our Discord server. I'll be putting a link to that shortly. Okay, so yes, I go live every single Sunday. So if you want to help me grow the channel even more, and yes, we hit the magical 10,000 subscriber limit this past week. If you want to help me out, give this show a like. If you're watching on playback, watching live, just give it a like. Leave me a comment as well. Tell me if you built any BurgerBots yourself, whether you're looking to do that, whether you built anything that can draw. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, and quite a lot of people haven't, I think over 70% of people who watch this don't subscribe, so don't be one of those people. Subscribe, it's free, it helps me grow the channel, it makes me happy. And like I said, I go live every single Sunday, 7 o'clock-ish GMT. We're currently in GMT +1, but that's going to change, I think, the end of next month. So we'll be back in about a month's time to GMT +0. So if you want to catch me live, you want to join in the fun, then you can do that. And we have a live Q&A every single week as well. Okay, so I was talking about logo before. So we actually used this in education a number of years ago, and I think it kind of fell out of favour a little bit. So Logo is an educational programming language designed in 1967. That's how old this is. It's ridiculously old. So let's try and butcher these names. We've got Wally Fjorzig, we've got Seymour Papert, and Cynthia Solomon. And it's not an acronym, as you might think it would be. The name was coined by Fjorzig while he was at Bolt. Not sure what that is. And derives from the Greek logos, meaning word or thought. So it's popular in the 1980s and 90s for teaching programming concepts with turtle graphics. So some people might be familiar with things like MSW logo. That's the one that we used when I used to work in a college. And you would have like a screen, and there'd be a little turtle or maybe like a triangle on the screen, and you would issue commands like forward 10, rotate, turn left 90 or something, and you could basically get it to draw all kinds of patterns on the screen. And if you then worked on a function, you could make it do really fancy geometric patterns as well with code. So on the screen there we have a little turtle bot. I think this was a Research Machines one. They were very popular in education. I think they probably still are actually. And this would connect to like a BBC computer, and you can see there it looks very similar to a BurgerBot. It's got two motors with little wheels. It has a pen that can go up and down. And they've got a great big servo on there to do that, and all kinds of fancy ribbon cables and whatnot. I think there might even be a speaker on there as well, just to make it buzz. But yeah, this is one of the things that kind of inspired me to make the BurgerBot in the first place. But they're tethered. They had to have like an RS-232 cable, which is what that big chunky cable is, and that go off to the back of the BBC computer so you could control it. So that's kind of one of the things I was shooting for when I was thinking about the original BurgerBot, and then even more so with the BurgerBot that has the pen in it, so we can do exactly what this used to do. So I think it's demo time. Let's see if we can make this thing actually work. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just head over to here, and I'm going to bring up my code. Let me just come off of this a minute. Right, and let me just get my code where I want it to be. Just need to bring this window down a little bit. Let's do it to about there. Okay, so let's have a look. First of all, before we get into the code, let's just have a bit of a look at this robot, shall we? So we can see here we've got the mechanism. There is the little servo horn. It's got this little like ghosty type shape, which enables it to connect to this rack and pinion kind of thing. And then the pen simply just sits inside like so. And you can see there it's sort of moving up and down, and we'll actually run the code in a second to get this to do what it needs to do. And then the pen sticks out the very bottom there, and if we adjust that right, we can get that so it's actually touching the paper. So there's that little hole that I was talking about. That means that we can get a little M2 screw that in there, and then it can hold that Sharpie or any other type of pen really securely. We've also got the nice BurgerBot logo on there, and you can see this is a completely separate piece from the top piece. This top piece is the blue piece here, and we've got the servo just to the side there. Then if we look inside, this is the new rangefinder that I've got. I've actually not got that plugged in at the moment, so it looks the same, but it has two Quest connectors, which mean that we can plug in just using this little Quest connector cable into the Quest connector, which, if I just move that wheel out of the way a second, is just there. And then we have a little button here. If I press that, that will sort of switch on or switch off the battery power. So if I press that on, there's a little light that comes on. If I switch that off, you just see that little light that comes on there. And we've got the USB cable as well. So you can see all this is quite compact inside. And I've got the wheels, I just took that wheel off just so that we could see it actually work. So at the moment I've kind of got these on the wrong way round just so that I can easily take the wheels on and off. And you can see, just like the regular, I'm going to get a red pen over me now, just like the other BurgerBot, we've got these M3 screws. So another flattish section other than these little pyramid pieces. And then we have the front and rear, so that's the support section, that's the rangefinder with the new inset. And they're all held in place, so these little nuts, little captive nuts on the top and the bottom mean that everything's very, very secure in place. I did put one there and then I didn't quite think it through. I've got some smaller beveled shape screws that could go into there. That would work, but for now I just left it off. It's actually quite secure, that's not going anywhere. You can see there we've got the gallium battery as well on the back, so that works perfect. So if I plug this in now, so I'm just going to plug that into there. I'm going to make sure that it's actually switched on. And I'm going to put that down, and then I'm going to plug it into the computer, and let's go over to that other view. I'm just going to check my chat to make sure nothing else, no other issues. So just bear with me 1 second, make sure, yep, that's all good. Okay, and oops, you don't want to see that. Right, so we've got a couple of demo programs on here. So the first demo program, let me just move this down. This one is basically just going to test out the motors working. So this is basically just using the motor shim, and I'm using MicroPython, batteries included from Pimroni. If you head over to github.com/Pimroni-Pico, you can find their batteries included MicroPython version, and it has all these extra things for their boards. So I'm using this one because I'm using the motor shim. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just slightly hold on to the robot because it will fly off as soon as I run this code. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press stop, which will bring up the console there. Let's get that on screen as well. There we go. And if I press run, this first program will basically just make the wheels rotate round very, very fast. If I just zoom back a little bit. So you can see there, it's just going through a few different test programs. Oops, just need to move that out of the way. There we go. If I put this down, it really does like move quite fast. But it's currently tethered because I'm running the code there. So let's have a look at the code there. So the first thing, we're just going to enable the motors. So we say for M in motors, m.enable, and then we just sleep for 2 seconds. And then we run full drive, full positive. So what we say there is for M in motors, m.full positive. And we can stop the motors by saying stop moving for M in motors, stop. And then we can do full negative, so it'll go backwards. And then we can also say coast. So it'll coast to a gradual stop. That's like a really nice feature there. And then there's some other code here which will perform like a sinusoidal ramping up and ramping down of the motor. So you could sort of hear them go as they sort of go faster and slower. And then there's another one, stepped one, so it'll sort of go and it'll go faster and slower, but in a stepped fashion. And then it will just disable all the motors after it's finished. So that's the first demo program. Now the second one will, let's have a look what that's going to do. It's basically just going to make the robot go forward. So let me see if that will work. I'm not sure if this one actually does anything. All right, it's complaining about the speed that I'm setting it. So if I just set that to 0.9, let's see if that works. Yeah, so that's basically just going to make the robot go forward or spin round for a second. Well, it'll go forward. It's pretty fast as well. I'm going to put it there, and then it's going to let it run towards my hand. It's pretty quick. Okay, so that's the very, very simple one. So what I've done there is I've created a class that's called BurgerBot, and I'm importing BurgerBot, and I'm simply just saying BurgerBot, or Mac, Big Mac, equals BurgerBot, then Mac.speed is a value between -1 and +1, and I've got some error checking in there that I probably need to just change, because if you actually set it to 1, it complains that you're not setting it to the right value. So if I do that again, if I say set that to 1, it will say the speed should be a value between 0 and 100, 1 was provided. What it should actually say is -1 to +1, and then actually allow 1 and -1 as a value. So -1 just being backwards. And what we're doing there is just setting the speed of the motors, and then we just say forwards for 2 seconds essentially, and then stop. So these kinds of commands make it really, really simple. Mac forward, Mac stop, and so on. So let's go to the demo 3 and have a look at this one. We'll have a look at the BurgerBot code as well in a second as well. So this time we're going to bring in BurgerBot again. We're going to make it to Mac again. We're going to set a delay to 1 second. And then we're basically going to make the pen mechanism go up and down. And we can do this by saying pen middle, print the word middle, delay, sleep for the 1 second delay we've got there, put the pen down, and then put the pen back up, and basically just keep doing that in little cycles. If I run that code, I can show you this on the overhead camera. So you can see that mechanism working really nicely there. So that's down, up, middle, down, up, middle, down. And if I just sort of show you the pen, you can see that going down nicely as well. So if I just leave that like so, you can't really see very much, but you can see the pen going up and down. And it goes up and down really nicely, completely vertically. So that's a test of the servo working. Let's stop that one. And then finally, the big test. Let's have a look at this. We'll run it and then we'll kind of walk through the code because there's a lot going on here. So this is going to basically set up a wireless access point. It's going to allow us to connect to that wireless access point. It's then going to present a captive portal with a couple of buttons for moving backwards, forwards, left to right, stop, pen up and pen down. And we'll see on the console all the different messages that appear as well as it gets through various different states of running that code. So if I go over to run, so what it will first of all do is it will start up its internal web server. So there you go, it says starting DNS server on 192.168.4.1, and that's on its own network. That's not on my home network, that's its own network. It's then starting the catch-all DNS server on port 53, starting its own web server on port 80. And if I go over to my my main screen now, let me see if I can show you this. What would be the best way of doing that? If I go to here and I click on the Wi-Fi drop down, you're not going to see that, are you? So let's try. Let me try sharing my main screen. So if I go to secondary screen, there we go. Right, so if I go up to I'm on a Mac. If I click on, it's actually the primary screen I want, isn't it? Not the secondary screen. Come on, Kevin. There we go. Right, so if I click on the Wi-Fi hotspot thing there, I can now see that there's something called BurgerBot. So if I click on BurgerBot, I'm also connected via a regular Ethernet cable as well. So I'm not going to disconnect my live stream as I'm doing this, but this is the same machine that I'm live streaming from, just so you know. Right, so I connected to the BurgerBot and look what's happened. It's popped up with a captive portal. So let me go back over to this view. I'm just going to bring that captive portal down a little bit so we can see what's going on. And I can basically now control this robot. So if I say pen up, what's happened when I press pen up, and this is where I said it's a little bit janky, I actually need to hit the back button. I can make it render this page every time, but what I want to get to is where it doesn't render anything, it just allows you to send essentially a form, does a post request to the server that's running in the robot. So if I do like pen down now, let's just get a good shot of it doing that. There we go, there's the mechanism for doing that. I just hit back. This is the jankiness. This slightly janky, and it will get better. I'm going to improve this. So if I now say forward, the robot is now going to go forward. If I go backwards, I can now stop the robot. I can make it turn left. If I hit left, you can see the wheels there. So if I now disconnect this from this cable here, it's now running completely under its own power. So you can see there it's spinning round. We can make that now stop. We can bring the pen up. We can bring the pen down. We can make it turn right, so it'll spin the opposite direction. Let's move it over a little bit. There we go. And we can also make it go forwards and backwards. I don't know what direction it's going to spin in here, so let's stop it. And then let's make it go forwards. I'm just going to leave it just there. and then I'm just going to get my hand over here to catch it, and I'm going to make it go forwards. There we go. So at the moment, it's because you have to click this back button on the bottom of the screen. It means that, let me just click stop on there. It means that it's not very easy to control or do writing with. So I will fix that. That is something I'm going to work on. But you can see there, we've got a captive portal working. So we have forwards, backwards, stop, left and right, up and pen down. And this robot is completely responding to that without any other wired connections. This is all over its own Wi-Fi. So there you go, pen up, pen down, completely over Wi-Fi. So I'm quite pleased with that working. I just need to work on the captive portal bit. That's not working exactly how I want it yet. Okay, so let's have a look at how this actually works in code, shall we? So let me go back over to Thonny. We can connect this back up again. So let's just go over to there, connect it back up. And I'm just going to cancel that and click stop just to restart the robot there. And what I'll also do is just go full screen so that we can actually see the whole code that's going on here. Right. Okay, and we probably just need to change that back as well to current application. There we go. Right, so demo 4. So we've got quite a few things going on. We're bringing in all the Few code. So Few is the library that will bring in all the web server. This is the Pico HTTP endpoint wrangler from Pimoroni. So it's got a server component. It has a logging, a DNS, and an access portal. In fact, if you look on the little tree on the left hand side here, we can see it's got a DNS, it's got logging, it's got time, so it can do time-based stuff, network time. It's got a server, so it can serve web pages. It can serve web pages that are templatized as well, so you can insert values within them and have it render that out, like variables. And there's just like the initialization part as well. So that whole Few library. Now we did go how to install this a couple of weeks ago. You can actually do it from the Pico just by typing a couple of commands in if it's connected to your local Wi-Fi. So that's what we're bringing in for the first 3 lines. Then we're bringing in this BurgerBot code. We'll have a look at that as well. Let's just get that open. And let's see what's going on here. So similar kind of thing. We're bringing in the motor because we're going to be controlling our motors using the motor shim. We're bringing in something called reverse direction from Pimoroni. Now the motors, because they are the same motor but they are facing different directions, they actually spin in opposite directions. So like that. As opposed to that. Try and think about that. So we need to reverse the direction of one of them so that when we say rotate them, they both rotate in the same direction. We're bringing in servo because we have a servo that we're controlling. I've got one of these nice cheap SG90 servos. So we're going to control them. They basically just have a 5 volt and a ground and a signal. And the signal can be 3 volts, but the ground and the 5 volts are needed. So you'll need to solder this. The only bit of soldering we need to do on the robot, we need to solder it to one of the pins on the Pico shim. So let me show you the Pico pack. So if I show you which pin that will be, let me just make sure that's the right one. So as it's in there, it's that one. Just there. Yep. So it's basically the same 5 volt pin, which is that one just there. So it's as we look at the Pico, if you think this Pico, if I put it in that direction, that's as you look at the Pico, and a regular Pico, it has a 5 volt pin just at the very top there. So that very, very top pin number, whatever it is, 40 or something, that's the 5 volt in pin. So we need to basically just steal 5 volts from that pin, that one. And that's what I've done on the other robot there. We can have a look inside as well just to verify that, if that helps. So that's for the servo. And then the servo's signal pin is just going to pin number 16. So on the Pico, it's basically just going to this pin here. So as we look at the Pico, it's this bottom pin here, the USB's at the top. And that's what we need to do. We can basically just send it sort of commands using pulse width modulation, but the servo library, which is what we're bringing there, just makes it so easy because you can just specify what angle you want it to be and it will do all that for you. The next 3 lines are the few library, so this is all the Wi-Fi stuff that we talked about a minute ago. And then we've got some garbage collection. So because we're doing web page serving, we're going to be shifting around quite large chunks of stuff in memory. So we need to make sure our garbage collection is really good. So this is the recommended setting from Pimoroni to do that. So garbage collection, and set the threshold to 50,000. Okay, so here's BurgerBot. So the first thing we're going to do is just set some motor pins. We're also going to set the speed to be 0 to begin with, and then whichever the pen servo is, I'm going to set that to be the servo using that library. So pin 16 is the servo there. We're then going to initialize things. We just need to change one of the motors, and motor 1 arbitrarily is now reversed. And then that's all we need to do in the initialization. You can ignore all the rest. If you wanted to change the other one, you basically just comment that out and uncomment that one. And then we've got some commands to basically do all the functions. So set the pen to the middle or pen up, pen down. We're basically using the servo functions to middle, or set the value to be 30 or -20. Their values I found really work well. If we set it too much, the servo will move completely upwards. And this little looks like an upside down ghost thing, which enables us to connect to that pinion, or the rack, sorry. This is the pinion. If it goes too far up, it actually disconnects and the pen just drops down. So we don't want that. And then as it tries to go back, it can't find it and ends up pushing it further down. So you always want it to be sort of in contact to one of those cogs. And I found between 30 and 20 work really well. 30 being down, -20 being up. And they're degrees. And then we've got forwards. So forwards basically just says for all the motors, enable the motors and set them to whatever the current speed is. Backwards is the same. We just do it minus the speed. Turn left, we want one motor to go one way and one to go the other way. So that's exactly what we do. We just say motor 0 goes the speed, motor 1 goes the opposite of the speed, the negative value of that. Turning right is basically just the opposite of that one. So the negative value is on 0 instead of 1. And stop, we basically just say for M in motors, M.disable, and that just stops all the motion. We could also just do set the speed to 0, and that would stop them too, but we're using the proper functionality of the Pico motor shim. And then we've got the speed value, so we can basically just return that, or we can set that. So we've got some getters and setters. And I think that's it. That's all that we have in there. So this is the bit of code that's currently wrong. Instead of it being less than, it should say less than equal to. Less than equal to. I think that would probably fix it up. Instead of between 0 and 100, it should be -1 to +1, like so. Cool, so that's BurgerBot. Let's go back to our demo and see what else we've got. We're bringing in sleep, because we like to do some sleeping. We're bringing in some maths, just if we wanted to do any of that sinusoidal stuff. I don't think we actually use that, to be honest. And then we create a variable from that BurgerBot called Mac. I was just thinking of Big Mac. That's why I've called it Mac. So Max speed, we're setting it to the half speed. If you set it to the full speed, it's really fast, uncontrollably fast, I would say. But if you're in like a really large room, knock yourself out, set that to the full power. We then set the domain to be burgerbot.wireless. That's what should appear on the captive portal at the bottom. I think if it says Apple captive portal, it probably means that bit isn't working just yet. And then the access point name, we can give that a name. And what I was thinking here is if you have several of these robots and you all want to be in the same room but have different hotspot names, this is how you would change that. So you just change the hotspot name there to be like BurgerBot 1, BurgerBot 2, or green, blue, however you want to differentiate your different robots. And you can just ignore command for now. And then we've got these decorators. This is the thing that actually captures the commands from your web browser, your phone, your tablet, and then does something with that. So if you just load up the page, that's actually a get method, and we basically just render back index.html, and that's a web page that we've specially created for this robot that's got the table of all those different up, down, left, right, pen up, pen down, and stop buttons. We can have a look at that in a minute. And then if we do a post, this is where we pressed one of those buttons. We would then want to process which button's been sent, which button's been pressed. So if the request.form.get forward, then make Mac go forwards. If request.form.get is backwards, guess what we're going to do? We're going to go backwards, stop, stop, left, left, right, right, pen up, pen down. So there we go. And then I'm basically just setting command to be whatever was requested in that request.form and printing it out. That's more for troubleshooting, if I'm honest. And then there's a whole bunch of other things here, and if you don't really want to know about these, you can probably skip over. You just need to have them in there. And these basically just redirect. So if I load up a web browser and I type anything in, and I'm only connected to this Wi-Fi hotspot, it will redirect those requests back to that index.html. So it basically just does a redirect. And that's where you see that, that domain name, that BurgerBot.wireless appear. There's another one there which is the hotspot request, and it will just return the rendered index.html. We can include what the previous command is. I'm not sure if I actually use that now in the template. And then there's a catch-all, which basically we don't need that word static method on there. Actually, that was from something else I was doing before. So this basically just catches all those requests and then just makes sure we get redirected back to the correct page, which is our index.html page. And then the final bit is the starting the access point. So this is all the magic that happens, how we actually start and create a wireless hotspot. So we simply say AP equals access point, and then whatever we want to call that access point. It is as simple as that. We can then grab what the current IP address is. It's by doing ap.ifconfig, and we're just getting the 0th element of that array because I think it has about 4 different things. And then we can basically just log that out by saying started our DNS server on the IP, and if we scroll down a little bit, we'll actually see that get logged out. If I just go to the very beginning, there you go. It basically says starting DNS server on, and then whatever the IP address is that it's given itself. It then runs that DNS server to catch any requests, and we do that via a DNS server, and then we do server.run to start the whole thing off in the background, and we can say web server started. So we can see there web server started, and then it says on port 80 as well. And then I've got a little last bit of code here which says, now I actually don't think this does anything if I'm honest. Because we're capturing things, we can probably get rid of all this code. I don't think it does anything. Let's actually just stop that and that. I don't think we need a while true loop. When we start that server, that essentially blocks any other code further down from running. This is why I had this start AP and hello, I think, just to check was it actually doing anything. Let's try running this and see what happens. If I press run, yeah, it's basically just going to carry on doing that server.run function, and that's why we had to make sure all our functionality, such as pressing the buttons, were captured by this code further up, which is this block of code here. So this index.html is doing 2 things. It's presenting our user interface, and it's also processing forwards, backwards, stop, left, right, pen up, pen down requests, and then using our Mac, our BurgerBot, to make something happen with those requests. So again, if I go back up to the top, I'm just going to change to a different network and then go back to the BurgerBot one. So I'm going to go back to the BurgerBot one now. As soon as that's connected, I think it takes about between 4 and 10 seconds for the captive portal to sort of kick in, and you'll see on the bottom of the screen when it does kick in, there we go, the captive portal has now popped up, and I can now do things like make the pen go up or make the pen go down. So I'm just going to click on that little back button. I will fix this because it's irritating me so much. I did have a version work where it didn't have that little back button. It did say the correct message down here. So instead of captive.apple.com, it would say burgerbot.wireless. And these would work for about 8 times and then it would stop working. So I just need to unpick what the issue is there. But this works. This works fine. It works on your phone, works on your tablet, works on anything. And it's completely wireless. That's what I love about this. It doesn't require anybody else's wireless. It just works. So really, really pleased with that. Okay, so let's get back to our slides. So we hit a major milestone this week. I'm absolutely mind blown about this. I made this little plaque. You don't actually get anything from YouTube other than an email saying congratulations. I think you only get the silver play button at 100,000 subscribers. So we've got 10% of the way to go there. We've done that in quite a short amount of time. I think it's been taken about just over 2 years to get from a standing start to 10,000 subscribers. And I think one of the things there is just by going live every single week and producing consistently good content, that's helped the channel grow. So thank you to absolutely everybody who's helped the channel grow. I absolutely appreciate that. If you want to join us on Discord as well, we have a growing Discord family. So if you head over to kevsrobots.com/Discord, you'll get a sign up page and you can put your email address in there. You also can sign up for our our newsletter there as well, which we send out about every 2 weeks. Just covers up what kind of videos we've currently done in the backlog. It's not a sales thing at all. There's nothing salesy in there. It's just pure information about what we've done. So you might want to consider that. And the Discord group is just like really fun to hang out there. If you want to follow me on social media, so I'm an avid Twitter user and I post quite a bit on Instagram Reels as well and posts. So you can follow me at Kevin McAleer on Instagram or at KevsMac on Twitter, and give me a follow on there as well if you want. And if you want to help support the show, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can do a super thanks. You can do a super chat if you're watching this in a live chat right now. I shall switch on the notification and things that pop up when you do those. Let me just switch that on there. And yeah, if you want to buy me a coffee as well, if you like what I do, you're going to download the STL files completely for free. And I've spent quite a bit of time working on these. There is versions of this robot that you won't see that where things haven't quite worked and I've had to sort of start again. So there's quite a lot of effort that goes into these. So if you want to help and say thank you for that, that's the way to do it. Just buy me a coffee. So you can go to kevsrobots.com/coffee is the easier link for that. And you can also join YouTube. YouTube have like a membership thing as well, and you'll get sort of special messages. I've not done any members only videos just yet, but that's something I might look at in the future if that's something people are interested in too. And supporters. So yes, I've got a new button I can press. So these are our supporters. Let me just turn that music down a little bit. So we've got Robert Brown, we've got Matt Kay, we've got Matt Heathcote, Stephen Gale, we've got Tech Cree, Shane Haveron, we've got Curtis Darst, we have Shemi, we have Thomas Weiser, who's been, I think, the longest subscriber and supporter of the show. He's been a member for over 2 years now. We've got Donald Williams, we have Carlos Mora as well, we've got Jeff Ford, Johan is that Dahlstrom, we have Jean-Paul Jolly, and we have Tom as well as a YouTube member. He just can't get enough of this stuff. So thank you everybody. If you want to be included in the credits, head over to kevsrobots.com/credits and you can find out how to be included here. So, or here I should say. So thank you everybody who's been involved in that as well. Cool, right, there we go. That's a bit... Music should fade out, shouldn't it? Okay, so I think that is everything. Let me just go back over to there. And let's see what we had. Yes, that's all the slides. So this is the point in the video where if you're watching this on replay, I'll say thank you so much for watching. And I will do a shorter video for BurgerBot, how to build a BurgerBot. I've made a midweek video that should be coming this Wednesday that you can watch to see how I put one of these together, and you can follow along if you want to print out and buy all the parts yourself. So if you want to do that, you can, and that'll be this Wednesday. And if you're watching this live, this is the point in the video where I shall say bye to people who are watching on replay, and we will have a bit of a Q&A. So thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time.